It's a right for every man to be free. It's a goddamn privilege to be an American.
All right, it is that time for the MinuteMan. This week we have an absolute ton of material to cover here with
Yes,
the
we
MinuteMan.
do.
So,
Yes, we do. All right, for those of you who don't know what the Minuteman segment is, the Minuteman segment is a point in our show where we start talking about some of the current events that's happening in the 2A world. And, all eyes are on the state of Virginia. Virginia has undergone a tremendous change in its political structure. The the DNC, I can't even say it, it's so foul to me.
no bias there, is there?
The Democratic Party has flipped both chambers in the state of Virginia. And along with the change in the politics and the politicians, along came some proposals for bills that are just an absolute assault on the Second Amendment. I think what I want to start talking about first is, a lot of people are confused about what kind of country we live in and what rights really actually mean. The Second Amendment is a right. A right is, it's actually an inalienable right. It's a right that's guaranteed to you by the creator of you, whoever you believe that thing, entity, thing, or person to be. It's not a privilege. It's not something that can be given or granted to you by the government. It's not something that the Constitution gives you. It's not something that the Second Amendment gives you. It's a right that you were born with that you can never lose. It's non-negotiable. It's non-debatable. It's not anything that's going to be taken away from you legally within the context of our Constitution. We live in a republic. This country is not a democracy. It's a republic. Yeah, the difference between a democracy and a republic is a democracy is a rule by vote of the majority. A republic has a constitution or a charter of rights to protect the people from overreach of the government. If you lose an election in Virginia, you don't lose your rights. You can't lose your rights. They're given to you from the day you're born till the day you die. You may lose the ability to exercise that right, but you don't lose it. If somebody shot me right now and I died, I still died with my rights to own guns. If 330 million people in America decided gun ownership is wrong and they voted against it, I don't lose my right. I may lose the ability to exercise that right, but I don't lose that right. So you have to understand the difference between a right and a privilege. A privilege is granted to you by your government or whomever your local authorities may be. A right is something you're born with and something that you do not lose. You cannot give it away. You cannot lose it legally. It can't be taken away from you. It can be suppressed. But you know what? People say it all the time. You get what you vote for. Do you really? Do you really get what you vote for all the time? Who'd you vote for when Obama was running for president? Byron?
Obama.
You didn't vote for Obama, did you?
No, I certainly did not.
Did you get what you voted for?
No.
No. Yeah, you don't get all the time what you get, what you voted for, but 100% of the time you get what you accept. And what the people of Virginia are doing is they're saying we're not accepting it. Now we talk about the legality of these 2A resolutions and the 2A sanctuaries. They're not necessarily going to stand up in a court of law, because as far as I understand it, that the municipalities, the counties are subjugated underneath the state laws. It doesn't matter whether or not the laws are actually, or the resolutions are actually legitimate under a court of law or in the eyes of the law. What matters is the fact that the people of Virginia have stood up. 30 of the 94 or 95 of the counties of the 134 that they have now, don't quote me on the numbers, I'm just going from memory, have now declared themselves 2A sanctuaries. The reason they did that is to let their people know in Richmond, we're not going to take it. We're not going to do it. We're not going to comply with you. And there's a lot of back and forth going on. There's talk about civil war. There's talk about using the National Guard. There's talk about deputizing people. There's a lot of talk going on. Do I want to see a civil war in the United States of America? Hell no, I don't. Do I want to be shooting my own citizens? No, I don't. Do I even want to use my gun for any purpose other than hunting, recreation, target shooting? No, I don't. But at some point or another, you have to realize that freedom isn't free, and you're only going to get what you accept. You can't count on the power to vote. Here in Arizona, we had 8,000 signatures show up with improper signatures. They didn't match. President Trump even said, hey, we need to check that out. It never got checked out. But bottom line is you can't put all of your confidence into the vote. You have to be prepared to stand for your rights. And that's the reason I think that everybody's looking at Virginia. And that's the reason I believe that the Virginians out there, they're not going to allow organizations like the New Virginia Majority, which is basic. We talk about it all the time, and we think people say, oh, well, communism, that's crazy. No, it's not crazy. They're a political party just like every other political party. You have the DNC, you have the GOP, you have the independents. You also have communists. That's what it is. They have a whole entire different ideology than we do. They have a complete vision of America that's completely different than ours. And I'm not saying go out there and do whatever. What I'm saying is understand that you have political opponents, understand that the NVM has taken over. I don't remember how many districts they flipped, but they did. They beat us at our game. They beat the NRA in their own backyard. And however they did it, why they did it, it doesn't matter that we're going to sit there, we can cry over spilt milk and say, you know what, you get what you vote for, you didn't go out there and vote. We had 40% voter turnout in Virginia. That means 60% of the state didn't vote. But even through that, the House in Virginia is only down by 2 seats. It's a 21-19 split in the House in the state of Virginia. So it's not impossible to fix the situation politically. It's not impossible to get back to where you were. And hopefully this is a major wake-up for not just Virginia, but everybody in the nation. The Second Amendment is a right that's inalienable. It's not up for debate. It's not up for discussion. Or any of our rights. So we have to be aware of that, not just as gun owners, but as Americans. We have to understand that we're under attack by some completely different ideology than what this country was founded on. And it's important that we understand that we need to unite. We can't sit around and point fingers and say you didn't vote, or you voted for the wrong person, or you voted for the wrong bill, whatever the case may be. You're either an American or you're not. Living in America doesn't make you an American. If you live in America and you think you're an American just because you voted, no, that's not the definition of American. That's not a definition of what it takes to make this country go forward. That's not what it's going to take to save this country from a future that we don't want to see. And that's what I want to discuss. Byron, B?
What worries me the most about Virginia is, and I put this in a post I did online today, it's if it can happen there, it can really happen anywhere. And, it's always been a conservative state. This last gubernatorial election, they obviously went the other way. But, if you think about how important of a state Virginia is, it was the first English-speaking settlement in the United States, Jamestown. More Civil War battles were fought in Virginia than anywhere else in the United States. More U.S. presidents have come from Virginia. I think they're tied with Ohio, but nobody wants to talk about Ohio. But more U.S. presidents have come from 8 U.S. presidents have come from Virginia. Its proximity to D.C., a lot of the people, obviously, government officials, and they live in Virginia and commute. It's kind of a scary proposition. It's not. I was explaining to my wife this morning. It's the real deal. It's not a scare tactic or anything that people are trying to talk about. It's actually a state government trying to disarm a population. They are trying to enforce the population from not being able to train. That's another law that a lot of people haven't been talking about that they're proposing is training with a firearm
Or martial arts even.
or martial arts for that matter, is going to be a felony.
It's going to be a felony. That's in the proposal of a bill,
And-
so it's not law.
And how is that? And how is that executable from a law enforcement standpoint? I mean, is me being at the range on a Saturday with a friend, is that considered training? I mean, it's serious questions here, you know, and then it's.
You look at the restrictions and the laws that they're proposing, and you look at communist countries. I mean, literally, I'm not overstating it. I'm not trying to scare up crazy stuff like from the McCarthy era or anything. You know, I'm talking about realistic attempts from these politicians to put into place people that have Marxist and Maoist ideals. They don't want us to live the way we live. They don't want us to have the freedoms that we have, the liberties that they have. They need to be able to control us. Yeah, there's a meme on the internet that says, you know, the government usually takes your guns away because they're about to do something that's going to get them shot, right? And, you know, I'm not making light of that, but if these politicians are playing games, it's a wrong game to play with the wrong group of people. Because I don't think Virginians are kidding. You know, I've heard some people say, you know, I had a conversation with one of your employees today, as a matter of fact. He said, you know what, you know, people say all this kind of stuff, but when it comes down to it, they're not going to do it because, you know, people think differently because they're on their own and they're just talking a bunch of crap. I think that if you went to the state of Virginia and you start asking the Virginians that showed up by the thousands, you know, by the time you put it all together in all these counties and municipalities, there's got to be over 100,000 Virginians that showed up to these town hall meetings and city council meetings where they decided to vote for a resolution of 2A. I don't think if you ask any of those people, they wouldn't have one moment of doubt about what they would do if their government were going to subjugate them into disarmament. So, yeah, I mean, we can all say this, that, and the other, but that's a terrible game to play. If that's a political ploy, if that's just political posturing, if the DNC really thinks that by saying all this and by mentioning the fact they're talking about putting the National Guard in to enforce counties where 2A resolutions exist. And what are we talking about? We're talking, you know, a lot of people may not even understand what a 2A resolution or a 2A sanctuary is. It's not anything other than the city or the municipality saying we're not going to allocate any of our funds towards the enforcement of these unconstitutional laws. They're not saying we're going to go shoot people. They're not saying we're not just going to, you know, we're going to overtake the government. They're saying, look, we get county funds and we get city funds, and we're not going to allocate any of those funds towards the enforcement of laws that we believe are unconstitutional. And then other people are saying, well, that's not possible because, you know, the state will cut off funding. They'll go after it and they'll use the state police to enforce the laws as opposed to the local police. What you're doing is you're dividing. The DNC is dividing the people into two factions. They're purposely doing it. They're stoking the fire. If this is Ralph Northam's way of sitting there and saying, hey, I want to win, well, he's on his way out, so he doesn't care. But if this is the way the DNC wants, they want to take this win that they had in Virginia, and they want to take Texas next. They've come out and said it. Texas is the next state. It's a huge state. You know, it's purple already. You've got some very blue areas in Texas, and they want to try to flip Texas the same way, and it's going to go from one state to another state to another state. And this is how communism spreads. What are they offering? Free stuff for everybody. You know, AOC came out and said it today. We'll give everybody free stuff. That's what she said. And this is how they're getting these voters to buy in. We're the party that's going to give you all the crap that you need for free. And that's how you win. Obama did with free phones. You know, they're flipping states that are formerly conservative red states by saying, we're going to legalize marijuana. You know, it's ridiculous. It is, without question, we're living in some of the toughest times since the revolution or the Civil War that we've seen in this country. If people don't know that they're in a civil war already, you're already in a civil war. This country is divided as it's going to get. People like you and I are sitting here. I've got even bloggers telling me, hey, man, here's what you do. You know, you can't just sit there and spew out all this bullcrap. You got to reach out. You got to go to the other side, and you got to be able to reach common ground. You got to have debates and discussions with these people. You can't censor them like they censor us. Are you kidding me? You know, the people they're bringing here, we're talking about people that can't be here legally in the country that don't care two shits about our language and won't even communicate with us. You got people that are communist Antifa people that are beating up old conservatives. You get jammed up because you're wearing a MAGA hat. And you're telling me these are people I'm supposed to have conversations with? I'm supposed to have a conversation with a governor who says, hey, man, if I have to, I'll send in the National Guard. They're going to make war on the American people. These are the people we're talking about that some of my fellow bloggers are telling me to go have conversations with. Let me tell you something. Those minds and those hearts and those spirits have been completely so bent that we're better off teaching our own. You got kids, you got grandkids. That's where we win the fight. We win the fight by teaching our children so they can teach their children. Our generation, people, we already know. You're not going to get bent back to being an anti-gun person. And a person just like you on the anti-gun side, they're not going to get bent back to thinking the way you and I do. So why are we wasting that time having a conversation? Why are we having, there is no conversation. You ever talk to a liberal person? Do you think they're having a conversation with? The conversation starts with, you're a jerk for having a gun. And then it's an attack on you. You go on the blog, go on the internet. Liberals aren't interested in having a conversation. They're interested in making their statement, and then they start jamming you up for being racist. Anything that you say, you're racist. Anything that you say, oh, you're anti-women,
I think that's to an extent. I honestly think there are educated liberals out there that you can have. I have some of my friends that are, I mean, complete 180 from me.
I spend too much time on the blog.
I have family members.
Yeah, that are complete 180 from me, and we can have an absolute civil conversation, and at the end of that conversation, still love each other because we respect the fact that they have a what they believe in, and they respect the fact of what I believe.
I can live with that. I can live with that.
Yeah.
Okay, what I'm saying
when you
is...
get an uneducated person who doesn't know what they're talking about and they're just spouting off what they heard on MSNBC just so they can actually appear to know what they're talking about, that's a different story.
But those people, you're not trying to convince them. You're having a discussion. You're not going to change their mind. They're not going to change yours.
I will put the invitation out here right now. Any person that differs with my ideology, as far as on the 2A subject,
I will have that.
That seat right there is always open. I have no problem with them coming on this show, and as long as it's presented in a civil manner and we can have a conversation about it, I have zero problem with talking to somebody about it. You know, you can always...
That's the way it should be.
Yeah, you can always learn from somebody.
I'm always open to people.
So am I.
I don't have a problem.
We gotta learn.
Yeah.
We've got to learn from each other, right?
Yeah, because eventually, this whole thing, it's got to come full circle, and people have to be able to communicate with each other somewhere down the line, or nothing is ever going to get resolved. You know, if there has to be some sort of resolution here, because the country can't take being at each other's throats for the rest of eternity, because it will turn to the point where you don't want it to go.
Chris, you're going to have to do a lot of editing when that show comes up.
You know what, though? I mean, I understand what you're saying. And I have people on the other side play devil's advocate here. You know, we're talking liberal, we're talking the screamers, we're talking the censor. But I also have friends that are a little bit more extreme leaning than maybe me, you know, and the 2A, and I believe in, you know, God, guns, family, you know, that's me. But then there are others that at the drop of a hat, they want to dance, you know, and that's not me. And that's not the way it should be, because when those two kinds collide, that's it.
I mean, I'll tell you, okay, I think that I was where you guys are about 3-4 years ago. And I completely understand that. Now, I think what's bent my experience, or has really shown me a different side of what I see, is the fact that it really underscored it when I pulled that article up to show you about the new Virginia majority. Okay, we're not talking about your average American.
No.
We're talking about people who were trained by the Chinese, They came from California. They were in the communist movement. They went to China to get educated under the Maoist philosophy. They came back. They changed the name of their organizations. They went out. They put it on the internet. It will never be covered on MSM, mainstream media. But they put it out on their own flyer. They said, we flip Virginia, and we're the new Virginia majority, and we're communists, right? And that's when I get fired up, and I'm not saying I want to dance with anybody, you know?
I
understand what you're saying,
Yeah.
right? Because you're right. There are people that they're driven to the point where they're saying, enough of this horse crap, let's just get to it, right?
Yeah.
And to be fair, I'm not trying to motivate anybody, to convince anybody. These are just my opinions, just like, we all have opinions, right? And my opinion is, no, I don't want to get this country. I would never want to see America involved or get into a second civil war. And that's been such a scary word, but it's out there. Everybody else is
being
saying
used
it.
more and more often,
Right.
and we become desensitized to it.
Right.
And I tell you what, my wife and I work hard. We got two kids, 7 and 6 years old. And the question pops into my mind, what are they going to see in 10 years? I want them to have the childhood that I had, and I grew up in Indiana, small town Indiana, you leave your porch lights on and the doors unlocked, that kind of thing, and ride your bike through the neighborhood all day long and the porch lights come on, it's time to come home and eat.
Sure.
I mean, that's red, white, and blue. I want them to experience that. But I see what you're saying, and I see the concern, but I also see the concern of, I'm also concerned with going immediately.
And I'll say, and I'll give you a little insight on why I think that way, why I think the way I do. What you got, the experience that you've got, and the one you want to pass on to your children, you got that from your parents. Yeah. They provided that for you, right? Your school system provided that for you. Your neighbors provided that for you. Your TV and movies provided that for you. We're not seeing that anymore.
It's different.
Yeah. So what we're seeing what we're seeing coming from the media, what we're seeing coming out of Hollywood, dude, there's a pedophile that killed himself supposedly that was providing little kids to all the big people in the entertainment industry, in politics. And we just act like that didn't happen, right? We got the prince.
Not Gunfucius. He put it up on the stockings at Target.
We got a prince. This guy.
I expect you to put a graphic on the show of that.
The Prince of England. Yeah, that was his homie. That's who he kicked it with. That's what they did. We're not seeing the heroes of your children's generation. Of maybe I'm 52, so the current generation. The heroes are the Antonio Browns of the world. The guy who goes on Twitter, plays football, is a complete fruit basket. That's crazy. He cusses out the NFL one day, apologizes the next. He's involved in all kinds. Those are who our heroes are. Your pop stars that do all kinds of crazy stuff. We don't have America anymore. And your children won't be able to enjoy what you had, if you don't teach them.
Right, it's my responsibility.
And we're allowing the state to raise our children. We have 2-parent household incomes. You're at work. Who's training your kids? Who's teaching your kids? Schools are. Who's teaching your kids? Twitter? Who's teaching your kids? Snapchat? Who's teaching your kids? PS4? And that's why, the reason I'm so fired up, it's not because, man, I understand 1,000% where you were at, right now. I understand 1,000% where you're at. I've lost some friends because they're liberals. Because I've come to a point where I said, look, man, my rights, my beliefs, the beliefs of this country, the ideals that founded this nation are more important to me than friendships. They're more important to me than getting along to get along. And sometimes I'm not talking about picking up a gun and going to war. I'm talking about saying, hey, look, guys, this is communism. This is us. This is the DNC. This is what they support. This is what I disagree with. And no, I'm not going to have that conversation with you because it's a waste of my flipping time. Because I can't change your mind and you can't change mine. Now, can we work independently as different groups towards a goal that we each have? And somehow those goals meet in the middle? Yeah, that's fine. I have no issues with that. But I don't think I can ever personally. I'm not saying you couldn't. I'm not saying you couldn't. I couldn't say you. I'm not saying any viewer out there couldn't. I'm not saying that you can't make a difference doing it some different way. This is just the way that I've chosen to because of the beliefs I have. I came, Byron talked about it in his blog. I came from a country that was taken over by communism.
I was going to ask you.
Yeah. I watched it happen. And now you got to say, when you were like 6, 7, 8 years old, how do you know what it's like? My dad had a crate of grenades, an M16, an M2, select fire, carbine, and a Colt 45 1911 hanging in the closet. It was never locked. I was told how to use it. I pulled my first grenade pin when I was 6 years old. Because the enemy, my communist neighbors from the north, their little kids are going to war at 6, 7, 8 years old. They didn't care. They would sacrifice them. So for me, it's not some weird movie that I've never experienced. I was in a market with my grandmother when I was 6 years old. In Vietnam, we didn't have supermarkets. We didn't have Safeways. You had markets like you see now. You see any travel, so you'll see it. It's a street market. Yeah. Vendors come out with vegetables, meats, fish, whatever, and they sell them there. And the Viet Cong were terrorists. They would go into those places and blow them up to scare the people, keep people from congregating, and just doing what terrorists do. Well, I was down there with my grandma. We didn't have, we had a refrigerator in our house, but most people didn't. And it was just common practice to go shopping every day for your food. So if you wanted dinner, you went after breakfast, you went down to the market, and you got your food. And my grandmother would always take me with her. Well, some guy pulled a freaking grenade, and it's a suicide bomber. He didn't have a vest or whatever, he just had a grenade. And he blew himself up, and he blew 2 other people up. And I was sitting there like no less than me, 10 feet me from Chris, watching a guy die because his kneecap got blown off. He's bleeding out. He's lost his entire lower leg. And nobody would come over there because they locked the area down so they can catch the guy, so you couldn't get any medical people in there. And I sat there and watched the guy die, and he was screaming and yelling, in pain. So I understand what it's like when a country starts to go south. And my dad talked to me about it every day. And one of the things he was like, don't listen to the TV. Don't listen to... My dad ran for mayor in the town he was in. He almost got killed doing that because they were going to kill him. He had enough votes to win. They were going to kill him. And he ended up not winning because my mom told him to pull out because she didn't want the whole family wiped out. And these are if you ask any immigrant that came to America from a country that's been subjugated, we didn't have the opportunity to teach our children what we wanted the children to know. And the dream that you have of having your children growing up in Americana, in Indiana, that's getting wiped out, man. They're not giving you the opportunity. And I'm not saying that you have to change your mind or do anything different. I'm just proposing to you, hey, look, this is the reality of America from a person who's seen how it starts to degrade, because it doesn't happen overnight.
And see, I've had to rely on history books and stuff, and I consider myself halfway decent, well-read in history and in communism, North Vietnam and South Vietnam. But yeah, I mean, that story alone, though, that you just told, that's a powerful story. That needs to be...
It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
And dude, I flew out of a KC-130. I was 8 years old when I flew out of one of the last airplanes to leave Vietnam. It's a cargo plane where they just shoved as many people in as they could. Disarmed my dad, said, hey, you can't take your... He had his gun down. Right. He was fighting all the way to the steps of the plane. He had his weapons on him. They disarmed him. He almost couldn't believe they disarmed him. So we get on the plane. My dad, I never saw my dad scared. Dude, he was messed up from the war. He had a completely whole different view of the world. He was a great guy, but he was messed up from having fought. He didn't have normal emotions. Fear wasn't a thing for him. The first time I saw my dad scared was he got disarmed. We got on the airplane. As we're taking off, we're taking flak. Mm-hmm. We're taking, missile. I couldn't tell, but my dad said, shit, we're getting shot at. Right? And it was the one time that he couldn't do anything about it because he didn't have his guns. He couldn't fight back. He was just sit and duck in an airplane. And my mom was like, my mom's the same way. She didn't cry. She didn't flip out. She just looked at my dad and she said, hey, look, it is what it is. At least we're all together. That's where to go out. And that's how, man, I'm telling you, it doesn't happen overnight. There's not some mystery magic switch that happens. And then one day we wake up and we're communists, right? It's not one day you wake up and you're disarmed. Look at the degradation of the 2A since 1934. You know, just look at little here, little there, you know, a little bit here of this, a little here of that, and they just strip it away. You know, it's death by 1,000 cuts, right? And at some point, we as people who care about this country, there has to be a side that says, look, enough's enough. I know what my rights are. I know that I can either exercise them or I don't. I know what my rights are, and they're not given to me by the government. They're not granted to me by the government. There should be no man or no group of men or women that tell you, Byron, whether or not you can own a gun. The Constitution is the law of our land. It's not what the interpretation of the Constitution is. It's the Constitution. It's written in plain English. You don't get to change it because if you're not happy being a man and you want to identify as a woman, great. That's great for you. But the Constitution is the Constitution. You're not going to identify it as anything else. And if somebody doesn't say that, if somebody doesn't stand on their feet and just say, look, man, that's our law. We are not a country that's ruled by a democracy. We're not ruled by popular vote. That's why we have the Electoral College. We are ruled by a republic system. We are ruled by the Constitution. And the Constitution is very clear. The Bill of Rights is very clear. There's nothing twisted about it. That's why I said earlier, it's what you accept. If you accept that the interpretation of the Constitution can be different than what it is, then that's what you will get. You'll get somebody else's interpretation of the Constitution. Or you can understand it for what it is. You're a well-learned man. You're a well-read man. It says what it says. Shall not be infringed. It doesn't say shall not be infringed unless. It doesn't say unless these people come around and infringe on it, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I'm talking, I don't want to overstate it, and I don't want to sit there and beat it into the ground. And I usually don't talk about my personal history like that, but if it takes that much for just to reach one person, and I know that, man, I got family that have lived in a concentration camp. My aunt didn't come over here until later, after we had left. You know, God only knows what happened to her in a concentration camp. She's a woman. She's a pretty woman. We don't talk about it. We all have our assumptions. You know, and that's how messed up it is that we're so clinical about it. I'm so sterilized from that the only thing that matters to me is this country is the last vestige of freedom on the earth. There's nowhere else to run. Somebody said earlier, let's just move to Texas. Dude, there's nowhere to go. This is America's it. There's no other state. Man, you got to stand up for it. Yeah, for people that have never had their freedom taken away, have never had family members killed, fighting for it, they wouldn't understand it. And that's what I'm trying to get across is you just got to understand, why would I lie to you? I'm not getting paid to do this. Why am I exposing my personal life to you? I don't get paid to do that. You think I care how many YouTube hits I get? I don't give a crap. All I'm trying to do is what little I have. When I came over here, my family had to be sponsored, right? When you're a legal immigrant, your family has to get sponsored by Americans.
You're sponsored by a church?
I was sponsored by actually a Mormon and a Presbyterian church, right? And these people, although they're separate faiths, they were so open. Just imagine if your house burned down today, Byron, and you went to your next door neighbor and they welcomed you and they fed you and they gave you every right. You do whatever you want, watch every TV show you want, raise your kid however you want, just come to my house. And that's what America was to us. That's what it means. You're not American because you live here. You're American because you earned the right to be American. Hey, listen, man, it's a right for every man to be free. It's a goddamn privilege to be an American. And people don't understand that. They don't appreciate it. And that's why I don't have conversations or I don't have friendships or I don't converse with people who don't understand that passion I have for this country. It's not that I don't like them. It's not like I go out there and seek them to destroy them or to make fun of them. I just don't bother with it. My time is too consumed with doing what I can. I have to repay a debt. I have to give back.
I'm gonna put your head in that quote on a shirt, just so you know.
You gotta, and even if you don't have my experience, man, you gotta get back to America. To be an American in every other country, man, there's always some kind of service you have to. In some countries, you have to do military service. In other countries, you have to do whatever it is for your government. Americans, we don't have to do anything for our country, and I think that's the most beautiful thing is you should want to do it.
It's our home.
It is, and you gotta defend. You gotta defend your house. Right, so that's why I don't want to come off as somebody who's an extremist. I want to come off as somebody who understands the situation our nation's in. I understand the cost of freedom. I understand what people gave up so that I can have my freedom, and I want to convey the fact that we are not going to get to that point that you want to get. You say that, hey, listen, man, at some point something's got to happen because otherwise it's all going to go to crap, right? We're not going to get there unless we individually do. Gandhi said it best. Gandhi said, you don't change the world by changing other people's opinions or their minds. I'm just paraphrasing. You change the world by changing your view of the world to help contribute to the change. You have to change who you are, and some people who are self-aware, the truth never needs a PR. It doesn't need a PR department. It doesn't need CNN 24/7 loot. People who want to know the truth will seek it. And if you're a part of that truth, you might be a catalyst or you might be a help to them, but you'll never change their mind. You can't, the people say, well, you can't lead a horse. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. Dude, I'm not even trying to lead a horse because you can't lead a human being. You can't lead anybody to do anything. You can't change any. If they don't want to change their mind, you're not going to change it. The only people that are going to change are people who want to change. I don't see that there's any kind of want or desire from the leftist side to change anybody other than us. They're not changing themselves, right? And until we change ourselves, what I would love is for everybody to see the world the same way in one focal point, right? But that's not going to happen. We're all too different. Principally, we're different in every single way. It's not going to happen unless we change who we think we are. You got to come to a self-realization. You have to decide what it is that you want out of your life. You want your children to have the life that you had. We all want stuff. Mm-hmm. How do we get it? We all want a free America. We want freedom in America. I've chosen my path to do it. Everybody else can choose their own, right? So it's not about trying to brainwash people into thinking a certain way or saying, hey, you got to be this fired up or not fired up. Or it's not about, whatever. It's about just recognizing, hey, we're at a focal point. We're at a fulcrum in this country, right? And, and this is a great time to bring it up. It's Christmas, There are parents out there working freaking double, triple overtime so they can come here and get something from the shop here to bring home to their kid. And you think the kids appreciate that? Nah. They're just like, oh, I didn't want that. Or, well, that's cool. Thanks, Dad. We've lost that. I'm pretty sure when you were growing up, you had whatever present you wanted, man, for Christmas. And when Dad brought it home or Mom brought it home, you probably didn't realize what they had to go through to get it, right? Joe, you got kids, all right?
Not at that time. As I got older, you start to see things.
And your children need to know that. Your children need they need to grow from us. This is how you win. In my opinion, this is how you win the fight. And make no doubts about it, we're in a flipping fight. I think our role at our age, in our age group, is to hold the fort and to educate long enough to make sure that there is something for them and to make sure that they have something to fight for further. We're not going to change this country overnight. There's no magic number to it. There's no magic way to do it. It's just teaching our kids, keeping like you said, God, guns, family, country. Those things are all important because they're all intertwined. If you don't believe in God, it doesn't matter what God you believe in. If you don't believe in a God, what do you believe in? That life is just a series of coincidences?
Okay.
There you go.
See, now that is why I didn't have the gun reviews in this episode.
And it's more important that, it's not about, when anybody agrees with me or not. It's a matter that we have the freedom to express ourselves,
And I had in a past life, a friend of mine was Vietnamese as well. And they came across on a boat, on a gold bar.
Yeah. And you know how
was
they have to
sponsored by a church
tell
and everything.
everything that they had. They sold everything they had, and and she was probably lucky because they're pirates.
Her father was, he's passed now, but I believe that he was the equivalent of what the CIA was for the South. He's worked on our side.
Yeah.
They
would have killed her family for sure, without a doubt.
Yeah, she had told stories about them having to hide, and things like that. So it was intense.
And you see that's what I'm talking about. That's what causes this kind of thing to come out.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm not sitting there playing video games and imagine or see a movie and imagine myself. Yeah, I want to be the super patriot guy. It's like you come to a point in your life. I'll tell you so. Your employee asked me today, what would happen if this happened? And I said, well, I'd do that. And he said, well, I don't think you do it when it comes time. I was like, well, you probably don't know me very well, and it's coming from a different place. Yeah, I'm sure there are other people that say they're going to do certain things when things happen and they won't do it. But I'm coming from a place where I know what happens if you don't do it, and if you don't do it, it's not going to be pretty. So, again, not being an alarmist and trying to raise all that stuff, but I'm sorry, dude.
No, it's all right. Yeah. It's all good.
Moving on to SBR
It's all
stamp.
stuff that needs to be said. Okay, 30-second answer. HR 5289, the Home Defense and Competitive Shooting Act. Quick premise is taking SBRs out of the NFA. What do you think?
Go with our guest.
I am not one to answer this question, actually. Wow. SBR tax stamps, huh?
Removing them.
Removing them, so you don't have to get a tax stamp for an SBR anymore.
I say I'm all for it. I don't think it should have been in
Yeah, I don't
there
like,
anyways. I don't see it as something that there's pistols.
I think now we're at the point in life where it's just a money grab now.
It is. It's
And if that's the way they want it, if they want to keep the tax stamp on the rifles, as long as someone is legally allowed to possess a firearm, and that's, at worst case scenario is 5 business days where that can be found out. As long as they're legally allowed to possess a firearm, if you want to go ahead and charge them the tax stamp above that so you keep the revenue coming into the government, have at it,
Well, I think it's pretty much obsolete, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a workaround for everything in the NFA except for suppressors.
Yeah.
That's the only thing left, right? So, I mean, I don't think this bill, I did an article on my blog about it, I don't think this bill will ever see the light of day given what's
Probably
going
not.
on. But at the same time, it just underscores how it's just stupid. It's people that don't know guns won't know anything about it.
Misinformation and uneducated. I'm not very educated, very privy to this, but I know that a suppressor does not sound like it does in the movies.
I mean, unless you spend like $1,200 and you're shooting a 22 subsonic or
Right,
some
right.
45s, right?
Yeah, it's. I know what the part of it was the competitive shooting portion of it. For some of these competitors that are shooters that want to run SBRs, when they want to build a weapon to run, it can be up to a year. When they're before they get the weapon ready to use for competition. So, last thing on the MinuteMan. John, Supreme Court heard your case the other day with New York Pistol Association.
They discussed it. Obviously, I don't know that it's going to come out good for the two Pro 2A side. I think they are going to at some point announce it moot. Because New York City basically says screw it, we give up everything. But we all know that it doesn't take anything but a change in the language of a law to reintroduce a new law. It's got to stop it. And it took 6 years. It took 10 years from the initiation, 6 years to get it to the Supreme Court. So, yeah, at the end of the day, like I said, you're right, you're right. is your right or a privilege, even if it comes down to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is interpreting, it's their interpretation based on a group of judges which are politically motivated because they're put in their seats by whomever the president is. So it's an interpretation of the Constitution. Yeah, so am I saying to ignore the law or break the law or anything like that? Absolutely not. You got to be a law-abiding citizen to a certain degree, yeah, to a certain point. And at some point, you have to decide, is the law constitutional or not? I know that in Chicago, it's not like everybody's following the law there, right?
Obviously not, because
Yeah.
there's people getting shot wholesale. All right, preview for episode 6. We are going to do the guns that we were supposed to do today. We're going to do 2019 handgun of the year, Taurus TX22, the Smith & Wesson Shield EZ380, and of course the brand new addition to that, the Smith & Wesson Shield EZ 9mm.
Well, we're not going to do the Glock 44?
Oh man, you
That-
said it. We almost made it without mentioning that term.
The Glock 44. The gun that everybody has anticipated. I mean, I can't tell you the number of gun owners that have walked up that I know personally on the blog anywhere. It's just like, man, God, I wish the Glock would come out with a Glock 19 frame size, 22 caliber, single stack, 10 shot, 22 cal. It's like daily. I guess Glock was listening. Thanks, Glock. I appreciate that, man.
Well, not that we get any sponsorship dollars from Glock. Or Glock even cares about us. But, I mean, I'm a Glock buyer. I shoot Glocks. But, man, they really just put a turd in the Glock box on this one.
What about you, Joe? Don't you love Glocks?
I was really hyped up. The legendary
Yeah.
kind of
The game changer, baby. It's coming out.
It was horrible.
It's going to lead the revolution in this
horrible.
country.
It almost made me cry.
You know what's funny is like we did a rifle. What was last episode before? We did a rifle, the POF Revolution, right? And we're doing this rifle. It's literally a revolution. It's actually a pistol, but it's actually a revolution in the firearms industry.
Innovation at its
They
finest.
took a 308 and jammed it down to a 5.56 223 size AR-15. We're pumped about that, man. We're out there shooting the thing. We're like, wow, man, this is light, it shoots well. And then we heard, Joe hits me up like, did 11 o'clock at night or something. He says, hey, bro, man, when you get up tomorrow, right, I want you to watch out for that Glock announcement. And I said, wow, they got something coming out? He goes, no, dude, I'm going to be busy with the kids. I'm going to be getting up late, dude.
He's getting his cast off.
yeah,
So I'm like,
just-
John, let me know.
Yeah, get on there. So like an idiot, I go on Glock's website. They got this thing where you sign up.
The brand live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I got suckered into that too.
So I signed up. I signed up. I think, but then I know better, right? Because I am a Glock fan, right? I'm a Glock fanboy. But I know that years and years of teasing about a Glock carbine, right? I was like, yeah, this is it. Nah, they're gonna screw us again, right? And then I figured, well, maybe they'll just come out with something like an early Gen 6 where they just put the grips or the finger grooves back onto the Gen 5 and say it's a Gen 6. Because that's what they do. Because the Gen 5 looks like a Gen 2 with no finger grooves. And then we come out with the 22. I just hit Joe up. I was like, dude, it's a 22.
And call it the ultimate trail gun.
There's already a Glock 44.
I mean, the only...
ISSC. They have. They literally. You look it up. It's
Yeah.
It's Austrian.
Right.
22, the size of a 19.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's... the only trail that gun is good for is the one that walks through a shopping mall. I mean...
It's not even that, dude.
I'm not going to take that thing on a hike with me.
It's like a strip bar with fully clothed women. It's like, what's the point?
Yeah. So we'll end
sorry about that, guys.
the episode on that.
What's
and,
our chances of getting a Glock rep in here?
Yeah. It's not like he shows up anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
Gaston Glock, we love you, brother.
All right. So episode 6 is coming up, and keep an eye out. We will be
At SHOT Show.
at SHOT Show, and we will be live
Yeah,
doing
live
the-
streaming.
doing the daily best.
Yeah, Chris doesn't
each
know
night
it yet, but we're
of the
live streaming.
SHOT Show. So until then, over and out.
Thanks
Peace
for
out.
having me.
Hey,
Thanks for
thanks.
letting me
Oh,
sit here,
I'm
guys. I
sorry.
appreciate it. No, that's all right.
What a rude host I am. Don, thank you again.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
I'm glad you
that
stayed,
education.
man.
I'm
Glad you stayed.
I wanted to see what it was about. So, thank you.
Yeah.
No problem.
The struggle's real, ladies.
And here we are at 2 hours again.
God damn. Oh, we're under 2 hours, Chris.
2 minutes.